I watched my son-in-law drop something into my wine glass, and in that split second, I knew he was trying to kill me. The realization didn't hit me like a storm. It settled over me like frost, cold, quiet, and absolute. My heart didn't pound. My hands didn't shake. Instead, everything around me slowed down. The jazz band was still playing. Guests were laughing. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier above. But all I could see was that tiny silver vial disappearing back into Damien's pocket, and the faint ripple in my wine where the drop had fallen. He smiled afterward. That same charming smile he'd been wearing since the day he married my daughter. I was standing at the head of my dining table in my riverside home, surrounded by 50 people who'd come to celebrate me. Celebrate the sale of Row Naturals, my company, my life's work, for $50 million. The same company I'd built from nothing in a kitchen in Savannah, Georgia, when I was a young widow with calloused hands and a dream too stubborn to die. This was supposed to be my night. My victory. My peace. Instead, I was staring at a glass of poisoned wine with my name on it. What would you have done in that moment? Screamed? Called for help? Knocked the glass to the floor and made a scene? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. I didn't panic. Maybe that sounds cold, but when you've spent 68 years on this earth, you learn that fear makes you sloppy. And I couldn't afford to be sloppy. Not when my daughter was standing 5 feet away in that beautiful emerald dress, glowing with pride. Not when her husband, the man who just tried to murder me, was about to raise his glass and toast to my health. So I waited. The band finished their song. People clapped. Waiters moved through the crowd, topping off champagne. Damien turned to greet one of the guests, his back to me for just a moment. That's when I moved. Smooth. Calm. Like I was just adjusting the table setting. I lifted my wine glass, the poisoned one, and set it down gently in front of the woman sitting to my right. Evangeline. Damien's mother. She was busy fixing her pearl necklace, the same pearls she wore to every family dinner like they were some kind of crown. She'd never liked me. Said I was too proud. Too independent. Too successful for a woman who should have remarried and settled down years ago. I picked up her untouched glass and placed it where mine had been. Then I stepped back, folded my hands, and waited for fate to do what I couldn't. Damien cleared his throat. He was tall, polished, the kind of man who looked good in a suit and knew it. He raised his glass high, that smile stretching across his face. To Celestine, he said, his voice smooth as silk. To a life of success, family, and future blessings. The crowd cheered. Glasses lifted. I raised mine, Evangeline's glass, and took a careful sip. Clean. Safe. Just champagne. But across from me, Evangeline reached for her drink. She brought it to her lips. Sipped. Paused. At first, nothing happened. She blinked a few times. Then her hand went to her throat. Her breathing quickened. The pearls caught the light as she began to gasp. Someone screamed. Evangeline collapsed. My daughter was crying. The jazz band stopped playing. But Damien? He was frozen. Staring at me like I was a ghost he'd tried to bury but couldn't. Let fate choose. I wasn't always the woman who could swap poisoned glasses without flinching. There was a time when I was just a girl from Savannah with dirt under her fingernails and dreams bigger than the broken-down house I grew up in. My daddy was a sharecropper. My mama taught at the colored school down the road. We didn't have much, but what we had was pride. Mama used to say, Celestine, you got 2 choices in this world, you can let it break you or you can break through it. I chose the latter. By the time I was 23, I'd married Thomas Rowe, a good man who worked at the rail yard and believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. We had one daughter, Lynette. She was our whole world, bright-eyed, curious, always asking questions that made us laugh. Thomas died when Lynette was 12. Heart attack. One minute he was fixing the porch steps, the next he was gone. Just like that. No warning. No goodbye. I was 35 years old, broke, and alone with a child who still believed the world was safe. That's when I started Row Naturals. It began in my kitchen. I'd always been good with plants. My grandmother taught me which roots healed, which oils soothed, which flowers held secrets. I started making lotions and soaps, selling them at church and farmers' markets. Within 5 years, I had a small storefront. Within 10, I had distributors across 3 states. By the time Lynette graduated college, Row Naturals was in major retailers. I'd built something real. Something that would last. But then Lynette met Damien. She was 26. He was 32. Tall, handsome, the kind of man who could charm a room without trying. He worked in finance, wore expensive cologne, and always had an answer for everything. Lynette fell hard and fast. I should have trusted my gut the first time I met him. We were having Sunday dinner, and he looked around my house, the house I'd bought with my own money, and said, "You've done well for yourself, Mrs. Rowe." Old money in a new suit. Something about the way he said it felt like an insult wrapped in a compliment. Have you ever trusted someone who later showed their true colors? Like if you can relate. But Lynette was glowing. She was in love. And who was I to stand in the way of her happiness? So I stayed quiet, smiled, welcomed him into our family. They got married within a year. Small ceremony. Beautiful day. I gave them a check for $50,000 as a wedding gift. Money I'd saved for Lynette's future. Damien's mother, Evangeline, came to the wedding dripping in pearls and judgment. She pulled me aside during the reception and said, "I hope you understand that my son is accustomed to a certain lifestyle. Lynette will need to adjust." I smiled. My daughter doesn't adjust for anyone. She leads. Evangeline's lips thinned. She never forgave me for that. Within 6 months of the marriage, things started changing. Damien convinced Lynette to let him manage her finances. Said she didn't need to stress about money, he'd handle it. She trusted him. Why wouldn't she? He was her husband. But I noticed things. Small things at first. Lynette stopped calling as much. When we did talk, she seemed distant. Distracted. She'd mention needing money for this or that, even though I knew she had savings. Once, I asked her directly, "Baby, are you okay? Financially?" She laughed it off. "Mama, you worry too much. Damien's got everything under control." That's what scared me. He had too much control. I started paying closer attention. I'd visit their house and notice designer bags Lynette never wore. Expensive watches. A new car that Damien drove but Lynette seemed uncomfortable in. When I asked about it, he'd flash that smile and say, "Just treating my wife right." But something felt wrong. Like watching someone drown in shallow water and being told everything's fine. Then came the dinner. It was a family gathering at Damien's mother's house. Evangeline had insisted on hosting, even though I'd offered. The whole evening felt stiff. Formal. Cold. I was in the hallway, looking for the bathroom, when I overheard Evangeline talking to one of her friends in the kitchen. "Women like Celestine always end up alone," she said, her voice sharp. "Too proud. Too independent. She built that little company thinking she's somebody, but money can't buy class. And it certainly can't buy family loyalty." Her friend laughed. "Well, at least Damien will inherit something useful when she's gone." I stood there, frozen. Not hurt. Angry. Because in that moment, I realized they weren't just waiting for me to fade into the background. They were waiting for me to die. The first time I noticed money missing from Lynette's accounts, I told myself I was imagining things. The second time, I knew something was deeply wrong. It started small. Lynette mentioned she couldn't make it to our usual lunch because she needed to watch her spending. This was the same daughter who had a trust fund I'd set up for her years ago. The same daughter who'd never worried about money a day in her life. I didn't push. Not yet. But I started watching. Listening. Paying attention to the gaps in conversations. One afternoon, Lynette came to visit. She looked tired. Thinner than usual. When I offered to take her shopping, she declined. Said Damien preferred she save money for bigger investments. What investments? I asked, keeping my voice light. She hesitated. Just some opportunities he's looking into. He knows what he's doing, Mama. He went to business school. So did a lot of people who ended up in jail, I thought. But I didn't say it. Instead, I smiled, poured her tea, and decided it was time to do what I should have done months ago, dig deeper. I called my accountant, Marcus. He'd been handling my books for 20 years. If anyone could help me quietly look into things, it was him. Marcus, I need you to do me a favor, I said. And I need you to keep it between us. What's going on, Celestine? I think my son-in-law might be stealing from my daughter. Can you look into their joint accounts? See if there's anything unusual. There was a pause. That's tricky territory. Are you sure? I'm sure enough to ask. It took him 3 days. When he called me back, his voice was tight. Professional. But I could hear the anger underneath. Celestine, you need to see this in person. I met him at his office. He spread papers across his desk, bank statements, transfer records, credit card bills. The numbers made my stomach turn. Over the past year, Damien had transferred more than $200,000 out of Lynette's accounts. Small amounts at first. Then larger chunks. Money that should have been sitting safely in her trust fund was gone. Moved to accounts I didn't recognize. If you think Celestine should dig deeper, hit that like button so we know you're watching closely. Where did it go? I asked. Marcus pointed to a series of transactions. Offshore accounts. Investment funds that don't exist. And this, he tapped one sheet. He's been paying off gambling debts. My blood went cold. Gambling. High-stakes poker games. Online betting. He's in deep, Celestine. And he's been using Lynette's money to cover it. I sat back in my chair, trying to process it all. My daughter, my smart, beautiful daughter, had married a thief. A liar. A man who was bleeding her dry while smiling in her face. Does she know? Marcus asked gently. No. I gathered the papers, my hands steady despite the rage building inside me. And I'm not telling her yet. Why not? Because if I do, he'll convince her I'm lying. He'll twist it. Make me the villain. I looked at Marcus. I need more proof. Something she can't deny. He nodded slowly. What are you going to do? I'm going to protect my child. Even if she doesn't know she needs protecting. I left his office with copies of everything. I kept them in a safe in my bedroom, locked away where no one could find them. Every night, I'd look at those papers and feel my anger grow. But I stayed calm. Quiet. Because I'd learned long ago that the best way to catch a snake is to let it think you don't see it coming. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Lynette called me, crying. Really crying. Not the polite tears you shed at weddings or funerals, but the kind that come from somewhere deep and broken. Mama, I need to talk to you. Come over. Right now. She showed up 30 minutes later, her eyes red and swollen. We sat in my living room, and she finally told me what I'd suspected all along. "Damien says we're broke," she whispered. "He says the investments didn't work out. That we need to be more careful with money." "But Mama, I don't understand. I had savings. I had the trust fund you set up. How can it all be gone?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her and tell her that her husband was a con artist who'd been robbing her blind. But I didn't. Because she wasn't ready to hear it yet. Instead, I took her hands. "Baby, let me look into it. Let me help you figure this out. Damien says you worry too much. That you don't trust him. Do you trust him?" She pulled her hands away. "He's my husband." "That's not what I asked." For a moment, I saw doubt flicker across her face. Just a flash. Then it was gone, replaced by that defensive wall that love builds when it's scared of the truth. "I trust him, Mama. And I need you to trust my judgment." For the first time in my life, my daughter looked at me not with love, but with defense. Like I was the enemy trying to tear apart her marriage instead of the mother trying to save her from ruin. She left an hour later. We didn't hug goodbye. That night, I sat in my empty house and cried for the first time in years. Not because my feelings were hurt, but because I knew what was coming. I knew that to save my daughter, I might have to lose her first. 3 days later, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Just my name written in careful handwriting. Inside was a single piece of paper with 8 words: "Check your company's old accounts. He's been there too." The message hit me like cold water. He's been there too. My company accounts. The ones I'd spent decades building, protecting, keeping separate from everything else. I didn't waste time wondering who sent it. Someone knew. Someone was watching. And that meant Damien's reach was longer than I'd thought. I called Marcus first thing in the morning. "I need you to pull records on every account associated with Row Naturals. Going back 2 years. Celestine, what's going on? Just do it. Please." It took him a week. A long, miserable week where I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think about anything except what I might find. I kept my days normal, went to church, had lunch with friends, smiled when people congratulated me on the upcoming sale of my company. But inside, I was unraveling. When Marcus called me back to his office, I knew before he even spoke. I could see it in his face. "He got into your accounts," Marcus said quietly. "I don't know how, but he did." The papers he showed me were worse than I'd imagined. Damien hadn't just stolen from Lynette. He'd been systematically moving money from my business accounts. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. Transfers disguised as consulting fees, vendor payments, administrative costs. All of it funneled into accounts that led nowhere. $87,000. Gone. How? My voice came out steady, but my hands were shaking. How did he access my accounts? Marcus pulled out another document. He used Lynette's information. She's listed as your emergency contact on several accounts, remember? For estate planning purposes. He must have gotten her passwords, her security answers. With the right information, he could authorize transfers under her name. Every line in that ledger was a betrayal written in ink. I sat there, staring at the numbers. My daughter's husband had stolen from me. Had used her trust, her love, her identity to rob the woman who'd given her everything. What do you think Damien's next move will be? Comment your prediction below. There's more, Marcus said. His voice dropped. I ran a full background check on Damien. You should see this. He handed me a folder. Inside were documents I'd never seen before. Court filings. Bankruptcy papers. A restraining order from an ex-girlfriend who claimed he'd stolen from her too. Damien had done this before. Not once. 3 times. 3 different women, 3 different cities, always the same pattern. Charm them, marry them or get close to them, drain their accounts, and disappear before anyone noticed. Why didn't this come up before? I asked. He changes his name slightly each time. Uses his middle name, drops his last name, adds a suffix. Damien Clark. Damien C. Ross. Clark Damien Ross. It's enough to slip through basic background checks. But it's all the same person. I felt sick. My daughter had married a professional con artist. A man who'd made a career out of destroying women's lives. The ex-girlfriend who filed the restraining order, I said. Where is she now? Marcus hesitated. She dropped the charges. Moved out of state. I couldn't find much else. He paid her off. Probably. Or scared her enough that she didn't want to fight. I closed the folder. My hands were steady now. The shock had burned away, leaving something harder behind. Clarity. I need a lawyer, I said. A good one. Someone who handles fraud cases. Celestine, if you go after him legally, it could take years. And Lynette. I know. I stood up, gathering all the documents. That's why I'm not going after him yet. I'm going to let him hang himself. Marcus looked at me like I'd lost my mind. What are you talking about? He's been stealing in small amounts, right? Testing the waters. Seeing how much he can take before anyone notices. But he's getting greedy. I can see it in these numbers. The amounts are getting bigger. The transfers more frequent. So greedy people make mistakes. I tucked the folder under my arm. I'm about to sell Raw Naturals for $50 million. That's more money than Damien's ever seen in his life. He's not going to be able to help himself. He's going to make a move. And when he does, I'll be ready. I left Marcus's office with a plan forming in my mind. It was risky. It required patience. But most importantly, it required me to stay silent. To let Damien think he was winning. That night, I called an old friend from law school. Jonathan practiced criminal law in Atlanta, and he'd handled some high-profile cases. If anyone could help me build an airtight case, it was him. Jonathan, I need your help with something delicate. How delicate? The kind that could send someone to prison. There was a pause. I'm listening. I told him everything. About Damien, about the stolen money, about the pattern of fraud. Jonathan listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he let out a long breath. Celestine, this is serious. We're talking about identity theft, wire fraud, possibly money laundering. If we can prove all of this, he's looking at federal charges. Can we prove it? With what you've shown me, yes. But we need to be smart. We need to document everything going forward. Every transfer, every conversation, every move he makes. And we need to protect Lynette. She won't believe me if I tell her. Then we don't tell her. Not yet. We wait until we have enough evidence that she can't deny it. I agreed. For the next 3 months, I played the role of a lifetime. I smiled at family dinners. I was polite to Damien. I even complimented him once on a new watch he was wearing. A watch I knew he'd bought with my daughter's money. And all the while, I was watching. Waiting. Collecting evidence. Then came the announcement. The sale of Raw Naturals was finalized. $50 million. The biggest moment of my career. Damien was the first to suggest a party. Celestine, you have to celebrate this. Let me help you plan something. Something big. You deserve it. I looked at him across my dining room table, and I saw it. The hunger in his eyes. The calculation. He wasn't suggesting a party to celebrate me. He was positioning himself. Getting close. Making himself indispensable. He was planning something. Something irreversible. "That's sweet of you, Damien," I said, smiling. "I'd love your help." His smile stretched wide. "I'll take care of everything." 2 weeks later, I got a call from Jonathan. "Celestine, you need to be careful. I've been tracking Damien's movements, and he just purchased something unusual." "What?" "A chemical compound. It's used in labs, but in the wrong hands, it can be lethal. He bought it under a fake name, but I traced it back to him." My heart went cold. He's planning something. Yes. And I think it's going to happen soon. The day I signed the papers for the sale of Raw Naturals, I felt like I should have been the happiest woman alive. $50 million. A lifetime of work finally paying off. But instead, I felt like I was holding my breath underwater, waiting to see if I'd drown or break the surface. Damien had insisted on being at the signing. Said it was a family moment. That Lynette would want him there to support me. My daughter beamed at me from across the conference room while lawyers shuffled papers and shook my hand. "Congratulations, Mrs. Rowe," one of them said. "This is quite an achievement." "Thank you." I smiled, signed my name, and felt Damien's eyes on me the entire time. After the signing, he pulled me aside in the hallway. "Celestine, I've been thinking. You've worked so hard for this. You deserve a real celebration. Not just a dinner, something memorable. Let me help you plan it." I studied his face. The smile. The eager tone. The way his hands moved when he talked, like he was already counting money in his mind. "That's thoughtful, Damien. What did you have in mind?" "A party at your house. Intimate but elegant. I know a great caterer, a jazz band from New Orleans. We'll invite family, close friends, business associates. It'll be perfect." "Would you attend that party knowing something felt wrong? Let us know." I should have said no. Should have made an excuse. But I didn't. Because I needed to know what he was planning. I needed to see how far he'd go. "All right," I said. "Let's do it." His smile widened. "You won't regret this." But I already did. The next 2 weeks were a carefully choreographed dance. Damien took over all the planning. He chose the menu, hired the band, arranged the flowers. He even insisted on handling the guest list, though I made sure to add a few names of my own. People I trusted, people who'd notice if something went wrong. Lynette was thrilled. She helped with decorations, picked out my dress, talked endlessly about how proud she was. Every time I looked at her, I felt my heart crack a little more. She had no idea. No idea that the man she loved was using her to get to me. I kept Jonathan updated on everything. He'd been working with a private investigator, building a case. The evidence was mounting: the stolen money, the fake accounts, the chemical compound Damien had purchased. But we needed something concrete. Something undeniable. "He's going to make his move at the party," Jonathan said during one of our phone calls. "Everything points to it. The timing, the setup, the fact that he's controlling every detail. He wants you vulnerable." "I know. Celestine, we can stop this right now. I can have police there. We can arrest him before anything happens." "No." My voice was firm. "If we move too soon, a good lawyer could get him off. I need him to show his hand. I need proof that even Lynette can't deny." "You're taking a huge risk." "I've been taking risks my whole life, Jonathan. This is just one more." The days leading up to the party felt surreal. I went through the motions, approved flower arrangements, tasted cake samples, smiled at Damien's suggestions. But inside, I was preparing, planning, making sure I was ready for whatever came next. I noticed small things. The way Damien watched me when he thought I wasn't looking. The way he'd steer conversations toward my health, my age, how I should take it easy now that I'd sold the company. The way Evangeline started showing up more often, inserting herself into the planning with comments about how these things can be exhausting for someone your age. He wanted me under the same roof as his mother, and under his control. 3 days before the party, I had lunch with an old friend, Patricia. We'd known each other for 40 years, and she could read me better than anyone. "Something's wrong," she said, setting down her fork. "I can see it in your eyes." I almost told her everything, almost let it all spill out. But I couldn't. Not yet. "I'm just tired," I said. "Big changes." "Celestine Rowe, I've known you since we were girls washing clothes in the river. You don't do tired. What's really going on?" I looked at her across the table. "If something happens to me..." "Don't talk like that. Patricia, listen. If something happens to me, there's a folder in my safe. The combination is written in my Bible, in Psalms 23. You know the one. Make sure it gets to the police. And make sure Lynette sees it." Patricia's face went pale. "Celestine, you're scaring me." "I'm just being careful." I squeezed her hand. "Promise me." "I promise. But I don't like this." "Neither do I." The night before the party, I barely slept. I lay in my bed, listening to the river outside my window, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. All the years of work. All the sacrifices. All the times I'd chosen building something over taking the easy road. And now here I was, about to gamble it all on the hope that justice still meant something. My phone buzzed around midnight. A text from an unknown number. "He bought a second vial. Be careful." I stared at the message. Someone was watching. Someone new. But who? I texted back, "Who is this?" No response. The morning of the party arrived bright and clear. Warm golden light, birds singing, the smell of gardenias drifting through my open windows. It should have been perfect. Damien showed up early with the caterers. He moved through my house like he owned it, directing people, adjusting details. Evangeline arrived soon after, dripping in pearls and that superior smile. "Celestine," she said, air-kissing my cheek. "Such a lovely day for a celebration." "It is." "You must be exhausted from all the planning. Damien's been working so hard to make this perfect for you." "I bet he has," I thought. Lynette arrived mid-afternoon, radiant in that emerald dress. She hugged me tight, and I held on longer than usual. "I'm so proud of you, Mama," she whispered. "I love you, baby. Always remember that." She pulled back, laughing. "You're being dramatic. It's just a party." But it wasn't. And somewhere deep down, I think she knew that. As the sun started to set, guests began arriving. The house filled with music, laughter, the clinking of glasses. The jazz band played. Waiters circulated with champagne. Everything was perfect. Beautifully, dangerously perfect. I stood near the window, watching Damien across the room. He was talking to someone, laughing, but his eyes kept drifting to the bar. To the glasses being prepared. To my glass. Then, just as the band finished their song, I saw him move. Casual. Quick. His hand slipped into his pocket. He leaned toward the bar. Toward my wine glass. And that's when everything slowed down. The band started playing "What a Wonderful World." People were gathering near the dining table. The toast was about to begin. Damien stepped back from the bar, that smile fixed on his face. He caught my eye across the room and nodded. "Time to celebrate," his expression said. I looked at my glass sitting on the table. Then at Evangeline standing nearby, adjusting her pearls. The waiter announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, if you could gather for the toast." Damien whispered to someone beside him, then turned to the crowd. "Make sure the champagne is ready for the toast." But I was already moving, already planning. Because sometimes, the only way to survive a trap is to let someone else step into it first. The swap happened in seconds, but in my mind, it stretched into eternity. Everyone was moving toward the dining table. The jazz band's melody filled the air. Crystal clinked. Voices hummed with anticipation. And there, in the center of it all, sat 2 wine glasses, one poisoned, one clean. I moved like I was simply adjusting my place at the table. Nothing unusual. Just an elderly woman making sure everything was perfect for her big moment. My hand reached for my glass, the one Damien had doctored, and I lifted it gently. Evangeline was beside me, fixing her pearl necklace for the 100th time that evening. She was distracted, talking to the woman on her other side about some charity event. Her glass sat untouched in front of her. I set mine down where hers had been. Then I picked up her clean glass and placed it in my spot. My heart was steady. My hands didn't shake. This was it. The moment where I either saved myself or destroyed everything trying. Damien stepped to the front of the room, raising his glass high. The crowd quieted. All eyes turned to him. He looked so confident, so sure of himself. Like a man who'd already won. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice smooth and warm. "Tonight, we celebrate an incredible woman. Celestine Rowe, who built an empire from nothing. Who showed us all what determination and grace look like." People clapped. Smiled. Someone called out, "Hear, hear." "To Celestine," Damien continued, looking directly at me. "To a life well lived and to the future, whatever it may hold." The words felt like a threat wrapped in silk. Everyone raised their glasses. I lifted mine, Evangeline's clean glass, and watched. Just watched. Evangeline reached for her drink. She was laughing at something someone had said, her face flushed from champagne and attention. She brought the glass to her lips without even looking at it. If you're shocked by what happens next, make sure you're subscribed, because what follows will leave you speechless. She took a sip. Then another. At first, nothing happened. She kept talking, kept smiling. I started to wonder if I'd been wrong. If maybe Damien had changed his mind, chickened out, decided against it. Then her hand went to her throat. It was subtle at first. Just a small movement. But then her eyes widened. Her breathing changed, quick, shallow gasps. The pearls around her neck caught the light as she clutched at them. "Mother." Damien's voice cut through the noise. "Mother, are you all right?" She tried to speak but couldn't. Her face was turning red, then pale. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Her hand knocked over her water glass, sending it crashing to the floor. Someone screamed. The room exploded. People rushed forward. Chairs scraped back. The band stopped playing mid-note. It was chaos, pure, terrifying chaos. But I stood still, watching Damien. His face had gone white. Not with concern. With confusion. With dawning horror. His eyes shot to the table, to the glasses, then to me. And in that split second, I saw him understand what I'd done. He looked at me like a man who'd just seen his own ghost. "Call 911. Someone shouted. Evangeline collapsed into her chair, her body convulsing. People were crying, yelling, trying to help. Damien dropped to his knees beside his mother, but his hands were shaking so badly he couldn't do anything. And then he said it. Quiet. almost too quiet to hear over the noise. She wasn't supposed to drink it. She wasn't supposed to. He caught himself, looked up, saw me watching him. Our eyes locked across the table. In that moment, no words were needed. He knew I'd heard. He knew I'd seen. He knew I'd beaten him at his own game. A woman grabbed my arm. "Celestine, are you okay? Did you drink anything?" "I'm fine," I said calmly. "I haven't touched my wine." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Someone had already called the police. The paramedics were coming. And Damien was still kneeling there, frozen, watching his mother gasp for air while his whole plan crumbled around him. He looked at me one more time. And I looked back. Steady. Calm. Because you see, when a person plans evil against you, they rarely think about what they'll do when it turns back on them. They don't plan for the moment when their victim becomes the one holding all the cards. The sirens were right outside now. Red and blue lights flashed through my windows. Paramedics burst through the door, pushing through the crowd. Someone guided them to Evangeline, who was barely conscious now, her breathing ragged and weak. "What happened?" one of the paramedics demanded. "I don't know," someone said. "She just collapsed." "Did she eat or drink anything unusual?" Damien's mouth opened, but nothing came out. He looked trapped, cornered, like an animal that had walked into a cage and just heard the door slam shut. I stepped forward. "She had wine. From that glass right there." The paramedic looked at the overturned glass on the floor. "We need to take that. Could be an allergic reaction or poison," I said quietly. The room went silent. Every head turned toward me. The paramedic's eyes sharpened. "What makes you say that?" I didn't answer. Just looked at Damien. And everyone else followed my gaze. His face crumbled. That smooth, charming mask he'd worn for so long just fell away, leaving behind something desperate and ugly. "I didn't," he started. "This wasn't." But the police were already walking through my front door. The police took control quickly. They separated everyone, took statements, secured the wine glass as evidence. I watched it all happen from my seat at the dining table, feeling strangely distant from everything. Like I was watching a movie instead of living through it. The paramedics loaded Evangeline onto a stretcher. She was unconscious now, an oxygen mask over her face. As they wheeled her past, Damien tried to follow, but a police officer stopped him. "Sir, we need to ask you some questions." "That's my mother. I need to go with her." "We understand, sir. But this is a possible poisoning case. We need statements from everyone who was at this table." Damien's eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape that didn't exist. Then they landed on me again. I met his gaze without flinching. "She knows," he said suddenly, pointing at me. "Ask her. She knows what happened." The detective in charge, a tall black woman with sharp eyes and no-nonsense energy, turned to me. "Ma'am, do you know something about this situation? Would you stay silent like Celestine, or tell the police everything right away? Comment below." I took a breath. This was the moment. The moment where I could speak and end this, or stay silent and let the evidence speak for itself. "I saw my son-in-law near the wine glasses earlier," I said carefully. "Right before the toast. I thought he was just adjusting them, but now I'm wondering if there was more to it." Damien's face went red. "That's insane. Why would I hurt my own mother?" "That's an excellent question," the detective said. She looked at me. "Which glass was meant for you, Mrs. Rowe?" "The one his mother drank from." The room erupted in whispers. Lynette, who'd been standing against the wall in shock, let out a sob. No, this isn't real. Damien wouldn't." Baby, I didn't. Damien moved toward her, but the officer held him back. You have to believe me. Your mother is trying to turn you against me. She's always hated me. I never hated you, I said quietly. I just saw you for what you are. Which is what? He spat. A man trying to provide for his wife? Trying to build a life. A con artist who's done this before. I stood up slowly. Should I tell them about Atlanta? Or maybe Miami? Or the woman in Charlotte who had to flee her own home because of what you did to her? His face drained of color. The detective's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Lynette whispered. I looked at my daughter. At her tear-stained face and trembling hands. This was going to break her heart, but it was time for the truth. Damien has been married twice before, I said. Under different names. He's stolen from multiple women. Drained their bank accounts and disappeared. The only reason he didn't disappear from you is because he was waiting for something bigger. That's a lie. Damien shouted. Is it? The detective pulled out her phone. Because we ran your name through our system when we got the call about the potential poisoning. And Mrs. Rowe is right. We found 3 different aliases, 2 fraud investigations, and 1 active warrant in Florida. The room went completely silent. Lynette swayed on her feet. Someone caught her before she fell. No, she breathed. No, this can't be true. Damien's face twisted with rage and desperation. Fine. Fine. Yes, I took some money. But so what? She has millions. She wouldn't even miss it. And she was going to leave it all to Lynette anyway, so what's the difference? The difference, I said, my voice hard as stone, is that it wasn't yours to take. She was dying anyway, he screamed. Old woman like her, how much longer did she have? I was just speeding things along. The detective grabbed his arm. Sir, you need to stop talking. Right now. But Damien was unraveling. Months of pretending, of playing the perfect son-in-law, of hiding behind that charming smile. It all came pouring out in a flood of ugly truth. She made Lynette weak. Made her think she didn't need a man to take care of her. Women like that, they poison everything around them with their independence and their pride and their... Enough. The detective's voice cracked like a whip. She turned to her partner. Cuff him. As they put handcuffs on Damien, his eyes found mine one last time. There was hatred there. Pure, burning hatred. You did this, he hissed. You switched the glasses. You tried to kill my mother. No, I said calmly. I saved myself. What happened to your mother was your own doing. You put the poison in that glass. You planned the murder. All I did was refuse to die. They led him away, still shouting, still blaming everyone but himself. The other officers started taking statements from guests, photographing the crime scene, bagging evidence. And then there was just me and Lynette, standing in my destroyed dining room, surrounded by the wreckage of what should have been a celebration. My daughter looked at me with eyes full of pain and confusion. Did you know? This whole time, did you know what he was? Not at first, I said honestly. But yes. I found out. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? She opened her mouth, then closed it. We both knew the answer. She wouldn't have. She would have chosen him over me, defended him, maybe even cut me out of her life completely. Sometimes the loudest truth is the one you never speak. You have to wait for people to see it themselves. He tried to kill you, Lynette whispered. My husband tried to murder my mother. I pulled her into my arms and let her cry. Let her break. Because sometimes that's all a mother can do, hold her child while their world falls apart and promise that somehow, someday, it'll be okay again. The forensics team worked through the night. By morning, they'd confirmed that the wine glass contained a lethal dose of a cardiac arrest-inducing substance. The same substance Damien had purchased 2 weeks earlier under a fake name. The evidence was everywhere. Bank transfers, forged documents, emails planning the party, controlling every detail, making sure I'd be in the right place at the right time to drink from that specific glass. He'd been meticulous, careful. He'd thought of everything except the possibility that I might be smarter than him. 3 days later, they found more. Damien had been planning to disappear after my death. He'd already set up accounts overseas, bought plane tickets for him and Lynette to grieve in private in the Bahamas. Once there, he would have drained whatever remained of my estate and vanished, leaving my daughter with nothing. When the prosecutor laid it all out, even Lynette had to face the truth. Her husband hadn't just tried to kill me. He'd been planning to destroy her too. The day Damien was officially charged with attempted murder and fraud, I got a call from the hospital. Evangeline had woken up. She was asking to see me. I didn't want to go. The last thing I needed was to face Damien's mother in a hospital room and listen to her blame me for what her son had done. But something told me I needed to hear what she had to say. Evangeline looked small in that hospital bed. Fragile. Without her pearls and her perfect hair and her superior smile, she was just a sick old woman who'd almost died because of her son's greed. "Celestine," she said when I walked in. Her voice was raspy, weak. "Thank you for coming." I sat in the chair beside her bed. "How are you feeling?" "Like I drank poison." She tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. Which I suppose I did. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she spoke again, quieter this time. "It was meant for you. I know. Why didn't you let me die?" The question caught me off guard. "What?" "You could have. You could have drunk that wine and died, and no one would have known. Damien would have gotten away with it. But instead, you saved yourself and let me take your place." She looked at me with something like wonder in her eyes. "Why?" "If you were Lynette, what would you do after hearing that? Drop your thoughts in the comments." "I didn't let you do anything," I said. "I swapped the glasses to save my own life. What happened to you was Damien's fault, not mine." "But you knew. You knew it was poison, and you let me drink it anyway. Would you have believed me if I'd warned you? Would you have taken my side over your son's?" She looked away. We both knew the answer. "He's my son," she whispered. "I raised him. I taught him right from wrong. How did he turn into this?" "I don't know. But it's not your fault. Isn't it?" Tears slid down her wrinkled cheeks. "I babied him. Made excuses for him. When his first marriage fell apart, I blamed the girl. When he lost jobs, I said it was bad luck. I never held him accountable for anything because I wanted to believe my son was good." I understood that pain. The pain of loving someone so much that you become blind to what they really are. "He told me about the money," Evangeline continued. "About taking it from Lynette's accounts. He said you were hoarding wealth that should belong to the family. That you were selfish and controlling. And I believed him because I wanted to. Because it was easier than admitting my son was a thief." "Did you know about the poison?" "No." Her voice broke. "I swear to you, I didn't know he planned to kill you. If I had, I would have stopped him. You have to believe that." I did. Whatever else Evangeline was, she wasn't a murderer. "When I woke up in this hospital," she said, "the police told me everything. The other women. The fake names. The pattern. My son isn't just a thief. He's a monster. And I helped create him." "You didn't create him. You just failed to see him clearly." She grabbed my hand. Hers was thin, bony, still marked with 4 bruises. I'm sorry. For everything I said about you. Every judgment, every cruel comment. You were just a strong woman who built something real, and I hated you for it because I never had the courage to do the same. It was the most honest thing anyone had said to me in months. I forgive you, I said simply. She squeezed my hand. Lynette is lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. 2 weeks later, Evangeline was released from the hospital. She moved into a care facility in Florida, away from the media circus that had erupted around Damien's arrest. Before she left, she gave a statement to the police confirming everything, including what she'd overheard him say when she collapsed. He meant to kill her, she told them. My son meant to murder Celestine Rowe for her money. That statement sealed his fate. But the hardest part wasn't dealing with Evangeline or the police or the lawyers. It was watching my daughter try to put her life back together. Lynette moved back into my house. She couldn't stand to be in the home she'd shared with Damien. Every room reminded her of a lie. Every photo was evidence of time wasted on someone who never loved her at all. She barely spoke for the first week. Just sat in the guest room, staring at walls, crying at random moments. I brought her food. Sat with her in silence. Let her grieve. Then, one morning, she came downstairs. Her eyes were red but clear. Mama, she said. I need to say something. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you. Sorry I defended him. Sorry I chose him over you, even for a moment. You were trying to protect me, and I was too blind to see it. My daughter's tears felt like punishment for a crime I didn't commit. But I pulled her close anyway. You loved him, I said. Love makes us blind sometimes. That's not your fault. How did you know? What did you see that I didn't? Experience. Pain. Years of watching people show me who they really are when they think no one's looking. I pulled back to look at her. But you're young. You're allowed to make mistakes. That's how you learn. I don't want to make mistakes like this again. You won't. Because now you know what red flags look like. You know what manipulation sounds like. You know that love shouldn't make you smaller or poorer or more doubtful of yourself. She nodded, wiped her eyes. What happens now? Now. I smiled. Now we rebuild. Together. And we did. Slowly. Carefully. We rebuilt her confidence, her bank accounts, her sense of self-worth. It took months. But every day, I watched my daughter become stronger. More careful. More aware. She started therapy. Started taking control of her own finances. Started asking the hard questions she'd avoided before. And through it all, I was there. Not hovering. Not controlling. Just present. The way a mother should be. 3 months after Damien's arrest, we got word that his trial date was set. The prosecutor had enough evidence to put him away for 20 years. Maybe more. Do you want to be there? I asked Lynette. At the trial? She thought about it. Yes. I need to see it end. I need to watch him face consequences for what he did. Then I'll be there with you. The day of the trial, the courtroom was packed. News crews outside. Cameras flashing. Everyone wanted to see the con artist who'd tried to murder a millionaire businesswoman for her fortune. But when I walked in and saw Damien sitting at the defendant's table in his prison jumpsuit, handcuffed, all I felt was sad. Sad that he'd wasted his intelligence on hurting people. Sad that Lynette had wasted years loving him. Sad that Evangeline had lost her son to his own greed. When the judge asked if anyone wanted to make a statement, I stood up. The courtroom went silent as I walked to the front. Every eye was on me. the woman who'd survived a murder plot by outsmarting the killer. The prosecutor had warned me I didn't have to do this, that the evidence spoke for itself. But I needed to say something. Not for revenge. For closure. Damien wouldn't look at me. He kept his eyes on the table, his jaw clenched tight. But I knew he was listening. Your Honor, I began, my voice steady. I'm not here to ask for the maximum sentence. I'm not here to beg for vengeance or paint myself as a victim. I'm here because I want to say something that needs to be said. The judge nodded. Go ahead, Mrs. Rowe. I turned slightly so I could see both the judge and Damien. 4 years, I built something from nothing. I worked through pain, through loss, through every obstacle that came my way. And I did it honestly. Every dollar I earned came from hard work and integrity. When I sold my company for $50 million, I thought I'd finally reached peace. I paused. Let the words settle. But Damien saw that money and saw an opportunity. He didn't see a woman who'd earned her success. He saw a target. Someone to exploit, to steal from, and eventually to kill. And he almost succeeded. If you believe in karma, hit that like button. It tells everyone this story deserves to be heard. What hurts the most isn't that he tried to kill me, I continued. It's that he used my daughter to do it. He married her not because he loved her, but because she was a doorway to my fortune. He spent years manipulating her, stealing from her, making her doubt her own mother. And when that wasn't enough, he decided I needed to die. Damien's shoulders tensed, but he still wouldn't look up. He thought I was an old woman. Easy prey. Someone who wouldn't notice or wouldn't fight back. But what he didn't understand is that strength isn't about age or size. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone take it from you. I looked at the judge. I don't need this court to give me justice. Justice already happened the moment Damien's own poison turned back on him. The moment his own mother nearly died because of his greed. The moment the truth came out and everyone saw him for what he really is. The courtroom was completely still. Even the reporters had stopped moving. But I do ask this court to protect other women. Because if Damien walks free, he'll do this again. He'll find another victim, another family to destroy, another life to ruin. And maybe next time, his victim won't be as lucky as I was. I took a breath. I swapped those glasses to save my own life. I don't regret it. I'd do it again. Because sometimes, the only way to survive evil is to reflect it back to its source and let it destroy itself. I looked at Damien one last time. I hope you find peace in prison. Real peace. The kind that comes from facing what you've done and becoming a better person. But whether you do or not, I'm free. My daughter is free. And you'll never have power over either of us again. I walked back to my seat. Lynette grabbed my hand and squeezed. Her eyes were full of tears, but she was smiling. The prosecutor stood next. He laid out the evidence, the poison, the bank transfers, the fake identities, the pattern of fraud spanning 3 states and 5 years. Witness after witness testified. Financial experts. Forensics specialists. Even one of Damien's previous victims, who'd flown in to tell her story. By the time they were done, there was no doubt. No room for reasonable doubt or clever lawyer tricks. The evidence was overwhelming. When it was Damien's lawyer's turn to present a defense, there wasn't much he could say. He tried to argue that Damien had mental health issues, that he'd acted impulsively, that he deserved leniency because his mother had survived. But the jury wasn't buying it. Neither was the judge. After 3 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder. Fraud. Identity theft. Money laundering. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for at least 15. As the bailiffs led him away, Damien finally looked at me. There was no more anger in his eyes. No more defiance. Just defeat. He looked back one last time, expecting anger, but saw peace instead. After the trial, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Microphones shoved in my face. Questions shouted from every direction. Mrs. Rowe. Mrs. Rowe. What do you have to say about the verdict? I stopped, looked at the cameras, and smiled faintly. Justice doesn't need an audience, I said simply. Then I walked away, my daughter's hand in mine. That night, Lynette and I sat on my porch overlooking the river. The same porch where I'd sat so many times over the years, dreaming about the future, planning my next move, finding peace in the quiet. What happens now, Mama? Lynette asked. Now. I looked at her. Now we live. Really live. Not looking over our shoulders, not afraid, not letting anyone dim our light. I don't know how to trust again. You will. It takes time. But you will. And next time, you'll be smarter. Stronger. You'll see the red flags before they become traps. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Thank you for saving me. Even when I didn't know I needed saving. That's what mothers do, baby. We stand watch. Even when our children don't see the danger coming. We sat there until the sun set, watching the river flow, feeling the weight of the past few months finally start to lift. It wasn't over. Healing never happens overnight. But it was beginning. And sometimes, beginning is enough. 6 months after the trial, I woke up in my riverside home to the sound of birds and the smell of gardenias drifting through my window. The same sounds and smells that had filled my life for decades. But somehow, they felt different now. Sweeter. More precious. I made my tea and sat on my porch, watching the sun rise over the water. This had become my morning ritual, this quiet moment of reflection before the world demanded my attention. So much had changed. But so much had stayed the same. Lynette had moved into her own place downtown. A smaller apartment than the house she'd shared with Damien, but it was hers. Completely hers. She'd started her own business, a consulting firm helping women entrepreneurs navigate the financial and legal challenges of starting a company. She was using her pain to help others avoid the same mistakes. I'd never been prouder. We had lunch every Sunday. Just the two of us. We talked about her clients, her dreams, her slowly rebuilding confidence. Sometimes we talked about Damien. Sometimes we didn't. But either way, we were healing. Together. Evangeline called me once a month from her care facility in Florida. At first, the conversations were awkward. Two women who'd spent years disliking each other trying to find common ground. But over time, we developed something like friendship. Or at least mutual respect. She told me once, "You saved my life and my soul, Celestine." The life by switching those glasses. The soul by showing me the truth about my son before I died believing his lies. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just said, "We both survived. That's what matters." As for the money, the $50 million that had caused so much pain, I did what I'd always planned to do. I kept enough to live comfortably and gave the rest away. I established the Rowe Foundation, a scholarship program for young Black women starting their own businesses. Women like I once was, full of dreams and determination but lacking the capital and connections to make it happen. Women who needed someone to believe in them. The applications poured in. Hundreds of them. Stories of women working 3 jobs while building businesses in their spare time. Single mothers developing products in their kitchens. Grandmothers launching companies in their 60s because they finally had the time to chase their dreams. I read every application myself, cried over most of them, and funded as many as I could. Because that's what wealth is really for. Not hoarding, not status, not keeping score, but lifting others up, creating opportunities, making sure the ladder you climbed doesn't disappear behind you. The foundation's first year, we funded 30 businesses. By the second year, 50. Some failed. That's the nature of business. But most succeeded, thrived, became proof that when you invest in people who've been overlooked, they'll show you what brilliance really looks like. One of my scholarship recipients, a woman named Maya who'd been living in a shelter while developing a line of natural hair products, sent me a card after her first year in business. It said simply, "You didn't just give me money. You gave me permission to believe in myself. Thank you." I kept that card on my desk. Still do. The media eventually lost interest in my story. The news cycle moved on to the next scandal, the next drama. And I was grateful. I never wanted fame. I just wanted peace. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that party. About the moment I saw Damien drop poison into my wine. About the decision I made in those few seconds to swap the glasses instead of screaming or running or freezing in fear. People have asked me if I feel guilty, if I regret letting Evangeline drink that poison. The truth? I don't know. It's complicated. I didn't poison her, Damien did. I just refused to be his victim. But I also made a choice that put another person in danger. A choice that could have killed her. I've made peace with that choice because the alternative was my own death. And I decided, in that split second, that my life was worth fighting for. That I deserved to live. That I wouldn't go quietly into the darkness just because a greedy man decided I was worth more dead than alive. Sometimes justice whispers, but it echoes forever. One evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, Lynette came to visit. She brought wine, good wine not poisoned, and we toasted to new beginnings. "Mama," she said, "I've been thinking about what you did that night. Swapping the glasses. And I understand it now. You weren't being cruel. You were being smart. You were surviving. That's all any of us can do sometimes. Survive and hope we make it to the other side." She nodded. "I want to be like you when I grow up." I laughed. "Baby, you're already grown. And you're already stronger than you think. But you survived something I don't think I could have. You survived something too. You survived loving the wrong person and coming out the other side still capable of love. That takes more strength than you know." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the river flow. The same river that had witnessed all my triumphs and failures. All my pain and joy. All my moments of doubt and determination. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't seen him put the poison in? Lynette asked. Every day. But I did see it. And I acted. And here we are. Here we are, she repeated softly. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, I whispered my evening prayer. The same one I'd been saying for months. Thank you for wisdom. For strength. For the courage to face evil and reflect it back to its source. Thank you for my daughter, for her healing, for her future. And thank you for teaching me that sometimes, the greatest power we have is simply refusing to die when someone wants us to. Evil often drinks from its own cup. Patience and silence are stronger than anger, because when you stay still long enough, the truth always reveals itself. That's what I learned through all of this. That justice doesn't always come with sirens and handcuffs. Sometimes it comes quietly, in a swapped glass, in a moment of clarity, in the simple act of choosing yourself over someone else's evil plan. I'm 68 years old now. I've lived through poverty, widowhood, hard work, success, betrayal, and attempted murder. And I'm still here. Still standing. Still watching the river flow and the sun rise and the gardenias bloom. My story doesn't end with revenge or bitterness. It ends with peace. With forgiveness. With the knowledge that I survived, my daughter survived, and we're both stronger for it. If Celestine's story moved you, if it reminded you that patience and wisdom always triumph over greed and evil, then share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story, because we have more tales of strength, survival, and quiet justice coming your way. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what you would have done in Celestine's position. Your story might inspire someone else who's facing their own battle. Remember, we're not just telling stories here, we're building a community of people who believe in standing strong, staying smart, and never letting anyone dim their light. Hit that subscribe button, and let's continue this journey together.